Hey, hello everyone. This is Shannon O'Loughlin, citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, welcoming you to Red Hoop Talk. You might notice that something is missing in our show. We're missing Roy today. Roy will not be with us for our interview. Unfortunately, he had a death in his family. His father, who he's spoken about with all of us at different times on the show, passed away. So he and his family went to Colorado, somewhere in the middle of nowhere where there's no internet, so they can take care of family business. So please, everyone, send good thoughts and prayers to Roy. And we will hopefully still do a great show without him. So without further ado, I am bringing in a guest co-host today. She was with us. You might remember her from our very first live show with a guest, Kim Metler from Heart River Coaching, and who is a citizen of the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation, is going to be joining as our co-host, our special guest co-host. So let me bring her up so y'all don't have to stare at my face for this whole time. There's Kim. Hey Kim, say hi to everybody.
Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Nice to be here again. It's magic.
It's magic. Poof. And we're here.
So this is, thank you so much for having me, for inviting me to be with you. And first I want to say to Roy, my condolences, and I'm thinking of him. And when I made my first appearance, that was the conversation that we had. And so I imagine this is a difficult time. So I'm thinking of him. And I also just want to congratulate the two of you since that epic episode. I just want to congratulate the two of you on what you've created. It's really something. It's really great to see what you've done and all of the amazing guests that you've had. So good job.
Woo! It has been fun, and we've been having a great time, and really picking up a lot of folks who are watching live as well as streaming. And my sage is going nuts right now, so there must be a reason that I needed to burn it. And again, our condolences and sympathy with Roy and his family as they get through this difficult time. But I guess, like they say, or somebody says it, the show must go on. So we're going to have our wonderful show with our wonderful guest today, who is Dion Killsback from the Northern Cheyenne Nation, and who is an attorney and is quite wise for his young age and has done a lot of great work in Indian country. But before that, I always tend to do this with Roy too, Kim. So I always tend to start blabbing away, and we forget to stop and take a minute and recognize the territory where we stand. I'm in Maryland and the DC area, and want to say thank you to the Piscataway Nation, and thank you for allowing us to stand in your space and be a part of your homelands. Kim, do you have a tribal record?
Yeah, I'm coming to you direct from Kumeyaay territory. And I just would like to acknowledge the ancestors that have gone before, the ones that are here with us today, and those yet to come. You're always present. You're always present. And I just ask for your grace and forgiveness if I say something or do something wrong. So thank you, Kumeyaay people.
Well, and you have to live up to Roy too. So he might send you a nastygram if you say anything wrong.
I'm going to do my best, but you know me.
Yeah, Roy should have, he should have tried to be on here with us, because we'll probably blow this thing up. I'm going to push the wrong button. Something bad's going to happen. So I hope everyone will stick with us and be patient while we move forward. So what has your week been like, Kim? What's been going on?
It's been a week, and I have a feeling a lot of folks can relate to that. So here in California, we've gone backwards instead of forward in terms of being able to go out and about and, engage with life again. Our corona numbers or COVID numbers are rising again. And it's been kind of difficult because we've seen some of the rollbacks. There were, some of the restaurants and service industry, gyms were open, fitness, hair salons. A lot of people in the service industries were finally getting back to work, and now we've had to kind of roll back again. And so that's been a little bit difficult to be with. It's impacted a lot of folks that I know. My coaching practice, being with clients, has all of this change and this sudden shift to going back to unpredictability and uncertainty. Well, even more unpredictability and uncertainty has been difficult for folks. But I just tried to be positive, and I just tried to do what I can to show up for people and know that you can only be present for today. Right. And do the best you can. How was your week?
It was okay. You reminded me of a saying, maybe you've heard of it, is if you've got one foot in yesterday and one foot in tomorrow, you're pissing all over today.
It's true though. It is really true.
I've really had to remind myself of that this week. Because I feel like I'm not doing enough, and I'm thinking about all the things that I have to do, and then the days are just flying by, and I'm not getting anything done, and I've got to stop and listen and be quiet for a little bit. I want to give a shout out to everyone who's joining us and who's commenting on Facebook or YouTube. I see JD, who's a regular with us. Nanoba, hey y'all, from Facebook. And Featherman, I don't know that I've seen you here, but you've already asked a really intense question. Is online sovereignty possible, or at least in law cases against a sovereign person? Is that data considered in itself sovereign and therefore can only be accessed by tribes? I think we're going to have to ask Dion when our guest comes on, because that's a little bit of an intense question about personal sovereignty and data sovereignty. But let's, I want to talk a little bit about you to remind people who you are. I'm going to bring up, if I remember how to do that. Oh, and I got to remind everyone, this is our first Sunday show. So
first Sunday.
Yes, if you recall that on the 10th, Friday the 10th, was our last Friday show with Shannon and Tiger Martin, which was a great show. But this is our first Sunday show, so we might have a new set of folks with us tonight. Awesome. Let me make sure I introduce you to Heart River Coaching and the work that Kim does. Not only is she a citizen of MHA, but she also works on, can you talk a little bit about your sovereignty sisters? I don't know what to call them.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say that I'm a recovering attorney. Yes. I'm going through that recovery process. And I'm surprised at how much that actually still informs the work that I do as a coach. My
that's
job,
scary.
It does. I mean, because there's lots of things that I'm rediscovering, I guess, in that former life. That actually I'm using it as wisdom to help other women in executive positions, in leadership positions. But I have to shout out to my day job, as I call it, my jobby job. I'm with Tribal Star at the Academy for Professional Excellence. And what we do is we train and provide technical assistance on ICWA compliance. ICWA, we love ICWA. Yes. Gold standard in child welfare practice, right? But what I call my heart job is Heart River coaching. And I am a self-care and career joy coach. And what that basically means is if you're sitting there going, I'm not sure I really like my job anymore, I can help you get some things squared away and figure it out, because especially as women, we pour so much of our hearts and our spirits into what we do. And it's really important that it brings us joy, and it's really important that we feel good and we feel nurtured by what we do. And so that's my practice, my coaching practice. I do one-on-one coaching, and I also periodically offer workshops, and I'm going to be starting one in September. It's called Badass Self-Care for Badass Women. And it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy what I do, and I feel like I am able to create a space for people who need a little bit of support and a little bit of quiet so they can process through some healing that they're trying to do. So I feel very, very gifted, and I feel very humbled that I get to do that kind of work. So thank you for letting me share it. And you can visit me there on my webpage, heartrivercoaching.com. And you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook.
Yes. In fact, I think you were just Facebooking or something, or twerking or Twittering or
I was
earlier. And then I've seen your TikTok. I saw your TikTok dancing. And Roy loves TikTok. So everyone check out Kim on TikTok.
Yeah, go. You can. I'm not sure how much I recommend it. It's ridiculous. But that's the whole point of TikTok, is just.
It's great. Well, it's ridiculousness, but there's also some great educational stuff and some really expressive young people who are just incredible. And I'm loving getting addicted to that.
So what I want to share really quick before you move on about TikTok, I stumbled upon early on, I've already told you about Cougar Town, so I don't need to go back into that.
Wait a minute. I'm seeing a lot of women who are making themselves known on our chat room. Maybe you do want to talk about Cougar Town.
Cougar Town, ladies. Well, so just as fabulous as Cougar Town, though, is there is Indigenous TikTok. There is Indigenous TikTok, and let me tell you, it is spectacular to see our relatives from all over the world bringing their culture and sharing their beautiful culture, and of course that unique humor.
Only natives.
Only natives.
Okay, so a lot of stuff is happening this week. We lost the most powerful civil rights leader of our time. And I had meant to pull a Mr. John Lewis, who's 80 years old, and was always supportive of Indian country. There was a great article in Native News Online today, I believe, that was quoting Suzanne Harjo, and she was saying you could go to him, and before you even asked your full request, he was saying yes to you, because he was so in line with what Indian country wanted and wanted to support Indian country. And he would help if you asked him, but he would also stay out of the way, which is a really powerful place to be for someone in power. Usually folks in power want to take it over and put their signatures all over it. So he was a very special and powerful civil rights advocate, and we're sorry that he's gone. We've also had some weird stuff going on with the Mcgirt case that we talked about last week. So this is the case where the United States Supreme Court said, hey, the Creek Nation's exterior boundaries of the reservation have not been diminished. You know, so everyone's been freaking out. Yeah, exactly, about what the hell that means. And unfortunately, a few of our tribal leaders are ready to give that new recognized sovereignty back.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Have you looked at any of this, Kim?
I haven't. So I haven't really looked into that, but I hate to say it. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, and it makes me really nervous, and it makes me really sad when this happens, because I mean, this was an extraordinary ruling from the court, particularly this court, I think, because, you know, there's a few folks on there that wouldn't rule in favor of the natives if they were on both sides of the case, right?
Right.
So this was really extraordinary, and you know, to hear that the tribal leaders are going to willingly take this position of saying, oh, no, wait, this is what we're going to do. But, you know, I have a question something that I've been thinking about is that kind of feeds into this, which is one of my first thoughts was, how is this going to be used in the elections for politicians that might be running for office? Or, you know, are they going to use this to leverage, you know, kind of like what happened here in California when gaming was a thing? We had Schwarzenegger they don't pay their fair share, and, you know, he got elected that way. That was one of the things. But
yeah,
you know, it's it feels like there's kind of some rain on the parade, Shannon.
Well, let's not. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback of my voice again, Kim. We're having that technical problem. Wait, now I think it's okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I know that the Attorney General in Oklahoma and originally the 5 civilized tribes all were in agreement, and the agreement in principle said that basically the state would continue to exercise the jurisdiction, the criminal jurisdiction that it had always exercised, which is you know, basically it completely reverses what the U.S. Supreme Court just acknowledged that we had. And so instead of taking some time and the tribes saying, wait, what can we do to rebuild our criminal sovereignty back up, because too much has been taken away from it. You know, they're starting to agree to just leave things as they were. Luckily, the Creek Nation and Seminole Nation are both standing up and saying, wait a minute, we're not quite there yet. And so I'm hoping that people will slow down and really think about how much leverage this court case gives them. But anyone who's of the 5 civilized tribes, call your tribal leadership and tell them to assert their sovereignty and don't give it away in this, you know, in these agreements with the state. That's the last thing that we need now.
Yeah. Do you think that response of business as usual, at least from the tribal side, do you think that's kind of like a fear response that we're not really comes from a place of, I'm not feeling like we're prepared to take on that responsibility?
Oh,
is that a loaded question?
That is. So let's hold on, put a pin in that, because that's a really good question. I think that's a great question. We want to ask Dion. I know there's one other news article that we were talking about, the MHA Nation litigation on the riverbed rights.
Yep.
Do you think we should go ahead and bring Dion up, and then we can have these discussions on these issues, all the 3 of us? Let's do that.
Yeah.
All right. Dion, are you ready? Let me introduce you first in a proper manner. You know, I was introduced to Dion by some of his crazy friends, and I'm so grateful that I I have gotten to spend some time with Dion. He's such a great, incredible man, a smart attorney. He does a lot of work pro bono for Indian fathers in tribal courts and otherwise. He graduated. He's a little bit younger than Kim and I. He got his law degree in 2003, but he's been practicing out there and also served in the Obama administration as well in Indian affairs. So let me bring him on, and he can tell us himself about what a great guy he is. Hey, Dion.
Good afternoon, ladies. Shannon, great to be here. Kim, great to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me on the show. Tammy. Great. Well, let me introduce myself. That's my Cheyenne name, and we are here in the homelands of the Nisitsa or Sitaya. That's the Cheyenne. It's often contested territory amongst our neighbors, the Atalaga or Colloquial, as well as the Blackfeet. So the lands that we are in is where the Northern are, and I'm from the White River District and the White River Band of Cheyenne. So it's great to be here, Shannon. And I understand Roy is not able to be here. I send my condolences and my thoughts and prayers to him and his family as well. And Kim, it's great to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you.
I understand that you come from the affiliated tribe. Great.
I do.
So where do you practice, Dion? Are you mostly up in your homelands in Montana?
Yeah. So I guess right now my practice is in Montana and Wyoming. I have several clients in Montana, the Crow tribe. They're my main client, but I also have clients with the Blackfeet tribe, and then the Confederation Kootenai tribe, their grooming entity. And then I also represent a nonprofit urban Indian entity in the Plains area. And then I do work doing some public defender work down in the Wind River Reservation, representing defendants for the Shoshone, Eastern Shoshone, and Northern Arapaho. So it's a very busy practice, lots of good work though. And then I do a lot of pro bono work for indigent fathers that are in tribal court or state court, fighting for their rights to be parents, to be fathers as well. So that's a lot of busy work. And it's a tough thing to be for single fathers or fathers that have been divorced or come from a marriage that didn't work out or a relationship that didn't work out. So those are some of my most difficult cases. The family law cases, domestic issues cases. Yeah, but it's a range of work, as you can tell. We do tribal work. I also do a little bit of litigation, as you can tell, with the tribal court stuff, but I've been in federal court as well, litigating on behalf of tribes. And then we do gaming, Indian land, free to trust, property rights, tribal law as well, with regards to administration and legislative work. But anything that a general counsel attorney would do for a tribe is pretty much what I do. Yeah.
So I know you were raised by a single mom, and I know education has always been important to you. But how did you decide to want to go into law practice? Because it's not a very forgiving profession. It can be a very painful profession because we often lose in court cases for our tribal nations. And it can be, a lot more, I think, is done in our legal work outside of court than actually in courts. But how did you get from little 6-year-old Dion to where you are now, and where you want to go?
That's a question that I get a lot, and I know that you guys were on earlier, and you guys were talking about being a recovering attorney. I know Kim, and I know that in other past broadcasts, some attorneys talked about the burnout of the profession, and I think it's very common for Indigenous attorneys, Indigenous people, because it's very the rewards are very few and far between, and the case law and the outcomes are so difficult to achieve. It takes such a long time. But I think if I look back, as you mentioned, Shannon, I did come from a single mother, that raised 6 children by herself, and I was the oldest of the 6. And I think at a very young age, my mother imparted the importance of education above everything else, because of our ancestors. Particularly, we come from a line of chiefs, and my great great grandfather was Chief Don Life, and Chief Don Life and Chief Little Wolf were the two of the principal chiefs of the Cheyennes that were transported and trekked to Oklahoma. And they were trekked to Oklahoma after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, where the Cheyenne and Sioux and Arapaho defeated General George Armstrong on June 25th, 1876. And that victory led to the U.S. cavalry capturing our Cheyenne and essentially burning many of our cultural objects in a mass pile. And we lost many of our sacred objects that we've held for millennia. And we were forced to go back to Oklahoma. And we spent some time in Oklahoma. And I think this is common for a lot of tribes. You see a lot of forced marches, just like we talked about the 5 civilized tribes. They were forced from the east of the Mississippi to Oklahoma as part of the Indian Removal Act. And that was a part of the U.S. government and policies of a manifest destiny of uniting the ocean, the coast, the east and west coast, and civilizing everything in between. So the Cheyenne were, unfortunately, even though we had won the Battle of the Bighorn, we had lost the right to maintain our reservation because of our status as considered hostile, and our hostile status led us to being trekked to Oklahoma. But after some years, the Cheyenne leaders made a decision that Oklahoma is not our homeland, and we would rather die trying to get back to our homeland than stay in Oklahoma. So that led to the exodus of the Cheyenne from Oklahoma. And my grandfather, Chief Don Life and Chief Little Wolf, were the two chiefs that led that trek of Cheyennes. So now you have two Cheyennes, the Northern Cheyenne and Southern Cheyenne. And those Southern Cheyenne that stayed obviously maintained the CNA reservation in Oklahoma. And the Northern Cheyenne, we returned to our homeland, which is here today in southeastern Montana. And it was reestablished under an executive order in 1884. But originally, the Cheyenne was part of the original 1868 treaty. So when people ask me about, what motivated me to become a lawyer, I was curious about this, meaning that these stories are ingrained in us as Indigenous people from a very young age. And the stories lead to more questions. The stories lead to, why did we have to leave? But we're here now. How did we get here? And my mother imparted on me that our leaders felt it was so important that our existence, our being, our identity was something worth dying for. And so I thought, well, and as a young boy, it's hard to conceive that there are any other tribes out there. But as you get older, you learn there are more tribes, and you learn that more tribes have experienced the type of trauma that your tribe has experienced. But my mother imparted that we tried to get along, we tried to play by the rules, and despite that, we are still here, even though they didn't keep their word, even though they didn't say what they were going to do, even they didn't stay committed to it. It's what they call forked tongue. They spoke with a forked tongue,
right?
Is the sign language. But we maintain our values, we maintain our obligations, and if we want to maintain who we are, we have to learn their way. At the same time, try to relearn the ways that were lost. And we talked about this a couple of shows ago, last show, about boarding schools.
Right.
And my mother, unfortunately, was subject to a boarding school, and she was, taught not to, like her language, like her skin, like her hair. And this was difficult for her because as she's gotten older now, she regrets not teaching me and my brothers our language, despite all our accolades. I'm an attorney. I have a twin brother that's a pharmacist, and I have a brother that's a doctor, PhD doctor, and he's a professor at MSU. He just moved to professor now at Montana State University. And I have a brother that has his master's as well, and has served as president of our. And then I have another sister that just graduated, and she serves as a suicide prevention coordinator here for the local urban engineer. My mom herself is an MP8 or MSW as well. And she's been in social work for decades and is very familiar with Indian Welfare Act as well. Our legacy, our family legacy, we have a lot of accolades, but the value is that we don't do it for these personal accolades. We do it to preserve our identity. We do it to preserve our existence as Sitsa or Sita or Cheyenne. And I think, our mom, she was tough. She was very disciplinarian, and that led to us to choose the paths that we chose. And there's a lot of people from our district, a lot of people from our White River district that are well accomplished as well. And I want to do the same things. I think of my cousins, and then my really close friends. We're from Busby. We're very proud to be from Busby, and very proud to be from the White River district. Yeah.
Just incredible. There's some great questions coming up in the comments. And Lance, is it Lance? Yes, Lance wants to know, how do you do that fork tongue sign?
Fork tongue. You create like a fork and then across as a fork tongue. It's split. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the official ASL sign language version, but
yeah. Well, and I have to qualify that too, because my mother was raised by her grandmother, and my grandmother was deaf, and so she only learned the Indian Native Sign Language. And there was a couple of days ago, I posted on Instagram and Facebook a house that me and my family had grew up in, and this house was a 2-bedroom home, but it was where my mom had raised me and my 3 brothers, as well as my grandma and my uncle Benny. And they all spoke hand sign language, and we as young boys learned the sign language as well. And so my mom, English was her second language, and Cheyenne was her first. So when we talk, we in Indians, it's normal for us to use our hands. So I purposely have my screen so you can't see my hand. So I have a lot of hand movement here, so it's not distracting. But it's very common for us to speak with the hands. It's pretty normal. And in our circles as attorneys, and sometimes we have to conform to the norm of what attorneys should do. and too much hand movement, anything like that is not viewed as accepting, or is not very well accepted. And that's just the practice. And I think that's some of the things that I think we've all learned. The microaggressions that we've dealt with growing up, whether it being in law school or getting into private practice or working with other firms and non-Indians. This is one of those things that you have to be effective in. Yeah.
That's good. Do you have, we were talking earlier about the Oklahoma, the U.S. Supreme Court case in Mcgirt, and what the current tribal leadership is trying to do to hopefully get some stability. And we were just about to start talking. Kim, you asked a great question, and someone in our comments actually said that, wow, I've never thought about how the case can be used for settler political gain, right? How it can be used for Oklahoma State political gain.
Yeah.
And if anything, Oklahoma is probably pushing to get the tribal leadership into a decision quickly. It's probably less costly that way. But Dion, have you been involved in any kind of negotiations like that, or what do you think is going to come out of this?
Well, I think you and Kim mentioned that earlier. The 5 civilized tribes are confronted again with a local government, state government initiative, and that initiative is to essentially maintain the status quo, meaning that so what, we have a Supreme Court case. Come on, tribal folks, let's all get along. This is a good deal. We got the case, but let's get down to brass tacks and let's see what this really means. And I think that there are different spectrums of Indian tribes that think, well, yeah, we want to get along. That's great, but unfortunately, we've seen arguments that against the Muskogee Creek, and those arguments were that the sky was going to fall.
Right.
The tribe would exert jurisdiction over everybody, and all the Oklahomans will lose their land. And you see the headlines, in Oklahoma that say Oklahoma loses its land to Indian tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the media again, not being accurate, but at the same time, it fails to recognize that Oklahoma was a set aside in exchange for a treaty for the tribes to, essentially, give up their lands in eastern of the United States forcibly under the Indian Removal Act. And that, the notions of, and this is Oklahoma for you. I mean, you're either a cowboy or you're a Sooner, right? And Oklahoma Sooners, that's what their song is. I mean, 85% of everybody's an Oklahoma Sooner. And so, what does that mean? You get out there in your, your wagon, and you're a Sooner. That means it's a land grab. So it's a local culture. It's a local phenomenon that this land is free. Come and take it. Forget the Indian treaty. Forget the Indian treaty right. The Gorsuch and the Supreme Court said, no, this is a promise. This is a promise that the United States made. And if you understand the history and what the 5 civilized tribes did, and I think as a young student, I didn't quite understand the concept of 5 civilized tribes, but I did, after reading that, they actually comported. They did everything right. They assimilated. They learned the law. They became astute scholars, and it still wasn't good enough. It still was not good enough for the United States government and the policymakers. And they actually governed better their lands, their people, even their slaves, than the non-Indians. And that government means that their developed social and economic structure was prosperous. but I guess the times, the greed, if you will, for more and more and more, this was overwhelming. And the basis for treaties, as you know, is you stick to your word. And I think Justice Blackburn, as we know, said years ago in one of the horrific, treaty cases, like good men, good nations should keep their word. And this is that full circle. This is the law finally trying to balance out what the law was intended to. And I think that's where me, the question that you had first, Shannon, about being an attorney. This is why I'm an attorney. As difficult and as far and few between as these victories are, this is why I'm an Indian law attorney. This is why I practice Indian law. I think that Indians have a personal stake in all Indian issues, and they have a passion for it. But you combine the colonization that's taken place that has led us to be in the position where we are, whether it's economically, but also if you look at our own internal lateral balance, meaning that right now I don't have a contact with my own tribe. I don't have contact with my tribe. But I'm home. I've been home for several years. But I can do work for the Crow tribe, who is my ancestral enemy. Okay. Who is my ancestral enemy?
Saying, what the hell are you doing on that street?
What are you doing?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the Indian issues are the same. We have more in common, between Crow and Cheyenne than we do with non-Indian interests or even state interests. And that's why this case here, even for the Crow tribe, when they won the Herrera case and in recognition of their off-reservation treaty rights, was so impactful. The thing is here is that the notion that treaty language of treaty tribes is still relevant today in how you prosecute a tribal member on Indian land. Now, I'm not here to make excuses about what that individual did. What we're saying is that who has the rights, who has legal authority to prosecute that individual? That's what it comes down to. So when I look back at our, the case law here and why I'm an attorney, this is why I'm an attorney. Now, obviously, I had nothing to do with the Mcgirt case, but it impacts me because I do work for Indian tribes in Indian country, and I do advocate for tribal sovereignty. And we have, a case from Crow tribe right now, trying to be heard by the Supreme Court in the Cooley case. It deals with jurisdiction as well. The ability of tribal officers, whether the BIA or tribal, to determine if an individual is a tribal member, whether that person can be subject to a question of jurisdiction. If not, then what extent that is. And the Ninth Circuit, in my opinion, got it wrong. And the Crow tribe has hired, a pro bono firm, Greenberg Taurig, Jennifer Weddle and them to do a good job. They've done a great job. And then you tack on voting rights. We have voting rights in Montana, the access to voting booths. We live in rural, Indian reservations are in rural America. And limiting the time frame or the ability to access those absentee ballots infringes on those basic fundamental rights to vote. So we have cases like that that are ongoing as we exist right now. So I think what you'll see is, and you guys are attorneys or recovering attorneys, you'll see it's a pendulum. The pendulum sways back and forth. For tribes against tribes, and despite Donald Trump being the president, his nominees and his confirmed Supreme Court justices have proven to be actually very positive for Indian country. So I think that's making a little bit of lemonade from that lemon.
A little bit.
And I think that's
that orange.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we gotta add a lot more water and sugar to that. Up.
Absolutely. Well, I want to make sure, I want to pull something up really quick because I know a lot of people have questions about the Mcgirt case, and because so many people are connecting jurisdiction with land rights, they're really two separate things. And I want to invite folks to um, go to this podcast by Rebecca Nagel. It's called This Land. And the podcast goes through, it talks about the history, and it talks about the ruling, is her most recent podcast. It's a great, she's great. She knows a lot about the history and is also understands the law behind it. So if you really want to get a little more information and in depth about that, go to This Land podcast. It's really great. I'll put the link in our chat room for everybody. But
right. So Shannon, I actually listened to that podcast as well.
Yeah.
And as you know, the ruling on that was delayed.
Yeah.
They had from session that was supposed to be heard. So there's great anticipation nationwide, and the Supreme Court actually asked for additional briefing. And the briefing wasn't on the actual law. The briefing was on what the potential outcomes could be, what the potential impacts could be, which means that the court was actually looking at not what the treaty language was and what it was meant to be, but what options or what outcomes would be if the Supreme Court determined for or against. So it's a very interesting dynamic that the Supreme Court engaged in briefing the potential outcomes and what those effects would be. And that's what I talked about before, is the sky falling and non-Indians losing all of their title and tribes getting their title to their reservation back, which is pretty much all of Oklahoma. Now, I think that's a real fear. When I say that's a real fear, that non-Indians that have possession of land, they have a title company that can trace back 5-6 generations that says, yeah, I have clean title to this. In reality, like I said before, if you look at Oklahoma, that was a land grab. The Oklahoma Sooners, every time they score a touchdown, they're reenacting the land grab of all the Indian lands in Oklahoma. And it's the same concept as the Dawes Act, the land grab on every single reservation, where there end up being checkerboard throughout the United States. And it's justified. Why? Because Congress did it. Congress has this plenary power to say that, we can give the Indians 160 acres and a mule and a wagon because we want to assimilate you. You have too much land. This concept is bearing on what I would consider non-Indians and their white privilege. The white privilege of knowing that deep down they understand that the land that they're sitting on, the land that they own, even though they have a title, even though they've gone through title insurance, when you trace it back far enough, it is Indian land. And they are doing what they think they can to protect it. And whether that's white privilege or white guilt, what we're trying to say here in the Mcgirt case, as well as Herrera case, is that no, we just want the authority for what the treaty language is, which is criminal jurisdiction to prosecute tribal members on Indian lands. Now, if you want to characterize that as a land grab where the Indians are trying to take your land, I'm sorry, that's not accurate. The same thing with the non-occupied or public lands in Montana as well as Wyoming with the Herrera case. A lot of people thought that was an attempt for the Crow tribe to expand their reservation and essentially undo these titles. So it's a real fear, is what I'm saying. It's a real fear, but that's not what the cases are, and that's not what tribes are.
Right. It's not justifiable at all. So if you know a little bit of Oklahoma history, you know that there were pieces of land that were provided other tribes were displaced, and then tribes were relocated to Oklahoma. They were given land, and what ended up happening over a period of time is the allotment policy, which checkerboarded the land. So you have Indian and non-Indian ownership within the exterior boundaries of the Creek Reservation or the Choctaw Reservation. So the issue is not who owns that non-Indian piece of land, it's who has jurisdiction over it. Does the state have jurisdiction over the area in the reservation, or does the tribe? And so for criminal jurisdiction, where it involves an Indian crime, it is the tribe or the federal jurisdiction and not state jurisdiction. So it doesn't mean
Right.
that people who own those individual parcels who are non-Indian suddenly lose their land, or suddenly they can't call their own fire, they can't call the city fire department or police. So I hope the media kind of shifts to actually being a public education source than terrorizing people and giving bad information. Kim, you've been looking at this MHA case.
Yeah, well, I want to say something that you both kind of touched on a little bit, and this goes back to my comment earlier about politicians leveraging this around election time. It's been interesting. So I was just thinking about the power of language and how language is used. And if I recall, the very beginning of the Mcgirt opinion was this. I got goosebumps thinking about it. It was, what did he say? At the end of the trail of tears was a promise. That's how it starts out. And it's like, where are we going, right? Then on the other side of it, you have almost all of the media reports that I saw reporting on this decision were saying, court rules land in eastern Oklahoma is Indian land. And that's, that's true, but it's also really incendiary because that doesn't really capture what the decision actually said. And I love the distinction that you made, is this wasn't about land ownership, it was jurisdiction. It was, where do we get this answer, which was term D, right? And so it's like, I think that it's really, when we're talking about, let's hope that the media does this justice. They've already failed in a sense. They've kind of set up this language. And, I also have no faith in politicians that, I think they're going to utilize this for their own ends and for their own agenda. But so I just had to get that off my chest. But the MHA case, so it's really interesting because the three affiliated tribes, and I haven't had a chance to actually look at any of the filings yet on this, but they filed a suit where basically they're suing, saying it's over the BIA basically reversed precedent in recognizing the three affiliated tribes' mineral rights to the land under the Missouri River through our reservation, which was dammed. And so that's one aspect of it, is who owns those mineral rights. And recently the BIA said, actually it's the state of North Dakota. But there's a lot at stake with that, because ours is an oil reservation, and there are billions of dollars potentially in uncollected and unpaid royalties that are due, and that's part of the motivation of that. But then there's also a question of illegal taking. And as I was saying earlier, this, I was kind of reading through a couple of the press releases on that announced this lawsuit, and I was thinking of that character on Saturday Night Live, Stefan, who describes the nightclubs. you know, and I just visualized him like describing this case as like, oh, it has a little bit of everything: treaty rights, land ownership, minerals. You know, I'm just trying to think about, you know, this Mcgirt decision is what is the possible impact on that, because ours is a reservation, is a treaty reservation as well. And it's been busted up and broken apart and land is stolen. And so, you know, what are the implications from Mcgirt when it comes down to this, if any? You know, they relied on the treaty in their decision. And so it's a really curious time, I think. And, you know, I don't know what your thoughts would be if you know about the MHA suit. I'm just going to go along for the ride on that one, to be honest.
Well, I think I've heard about it, yes. And the reason I've heard about it is because I'm a water attorney. And so one of the things that, you know, our tribe, Northern Cheyenne, had to do was we had to litigate the issue of the border of our eastern reservation, which is the river. And the state had asserted a very similar argument that the state of North Dakota is asserting now, is that everything below that, you know, belongs to the state upon statehood under the Constitution. So it's an interesting dynamic because what the Northern Cheyenne Tribe had to do was had to prove its navigability, meaning that it had to be able to be used as a boatway. And very similar here is that when we look at other Indian case water law, you know, and obviously the paramount you know, case is you know, the Winters Doctrine out of Fort Belknap, Montana, which, you know, essentially says, you know, it makes no sense to grant a reservation reserve of land for a tribe without granting them more water, right, for use for purposes, for existence, whether it's farm or sustenance or the ability to maintain even fisheries. So yeah, the title, meaning that, and this is different for every tribe. When you look at the title of the bed of a waterway, but also the mineral rights that flow from that, it's very interesting. You know, some tribes are different. You know, and we have, you know, the Northern Cheyenne Tribe has a very different case, a Hollowbreast case, that talks about the individual trying to lease his rights, and the Supreme Court saying no, those mineral rights belong to the tribe, and the individual can't lease that. The individual only owns the surface. So that was a very big case which prevented ARCO, or one of the big coal companies at the time, from trying to take advantage and try the Northern Cheyenne Tribe pennies on the dollar. So I think, you know, Kim, you know, I'm going to monitor that case as well, because it's going to have the same type of implications across any nation. And you know, I do think that when we look at also the other recent case that came out, you know, regarding the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, and the requirement for the federal government to fully conduct an environmental impact study was significant, even though it's taken 3 or 4 years. This is something that I've spoken about in numerous times in 2016. And I actually represented a lot of defendants that were arrested under Torrek Luce in North Dakota, and knew that the law was on their side, and that despite their arrests for disorderly conduct or disturbing the peace, you know, trying to do the right, all of my defendants, all of my clients were successful in getting their cases deferred. So I was successful in 100% of those cases. In this case, precedent that came out, you know, essentially finding that the oil cannot run until a full EIS is completed, is something that I knew would be coming. But, you know, there's still a battle going on, whether or not the company is actually going to listen to that order. And it's remnant of you know, the same thing that Andrew Jackson did. You know, the Supreme Court made a decision, let them enforce it. You know, there's the same issue here with, on the pipeline. The court there made a decision, let's see them enforce it. And what the pipeline company says, no, we're going to keep running. We're going to keep running oil through that, keep running fluid from that. So it's very interesting to see how that turns out there. I'm watching that as well.
I have to say, so the
I was going to be quiet there to see if like.
Yeah, I got I've been taking notes. Things asked of. So I have to just say that I think I'm going to need to find the recovering attorney meeting after we're done, because my brain is like, oh, you know what? Yeah, you know what? That's what I miss. I miss this. And then I have to pull myself back and say, it wasn't healthy for my spirit to be doing that job. Because, I think you were talking about that. It's not easy to be an attorney, any attorney. It's not easy to be. It's not easy to be an Indian attorney working in Indian country for the people. And, burnout rates are high. And I think, we were talking about part of it is, the victories come so few and far between. But I think, the other part of it that I just want to say, because, this is the coach in me coming out, is, you got to recognize the role of that unresolved historic trauma that is always at play when we're dealing with legal issues in Indian country, whether it's internally with, we're dealing with tribal law for our own people, no matter what that is, it's like, we have these legal issues because of this history, right? We were doing fine governing ourselves out on our homelands, doing our thing. We were doing just fine. And so, fast forward to where we are now, I just feel like so much of what we have to deal with in the legal issues, is like having to stir up and manage the results of this historical trauma. And not only that, but engaging with the people themselves, whether you're reporting to the tribal council or you're interacting with members of the nation, that unresolved trauma plays out. And it's really difficult sometimes to be faced with some of the smoke and fire that comes your way. Mm-hmm. Even as you're showing up to be an ally and to be a helper and to really be an advocate for the people. I think that being an Indian attorney in Indian country really is unlike any other job that you'll ever have. And, so anyone still doing it, you have my respect. I'm just saying.
Well, and I think, there are a lot of attorneys out there. I speak with a lot of them. I have a lot of friends that are attorneys. But, something that struck me, is during this time, this COVID-19 pandemic. One of my good friends, Quanah Spencer, and he found himself in a really, really, really scary condition. And I had to send a lot of prayers to him because his mother reached out to me, and it made me look at the work that he's done, but also the work that we've done. Because I met Quanah when he was, in law school, and we were doing moot court. We were doing moot court. This was 20 years ago, and we've been friends ever since. But we've struggled with our own tribes. We've struggled with Indian country, but we're still Indian attorneys, and we've had several marriages that have failed, but we have children. And he continues to be an attorney, and I continue to be an attorney too. And what we always come back to is that we as Indians, we have a much more personal stake in the outcome of the legal work that we do.
100%.
Even despite being having our own tribal members or even our own family members, be critical of us. And even other tribes or other tribal members. And I think over the years, in our experience, and Shannon knows this, and working with Interior and NIDC, but also other Indian attorneys throughout the Southwest and the East and West Coast, is that you develop a knack for surrounding yourself around people that are of the same mindset, understanding that we all have the same struggles, we all have the same adversity, but if we get together and we commiserate, that doesn't do anybody any good. So stuff like this, when we're on the a Zoom call or something like this, where we can talk about the victories and talk about the great work that's been done, but also look forward to the great work that needs to happen. That's the motivation. That's the motivation that I think we use to motivate us, because we've come from people of trauma, and it's a part of us as well. But the same resilience and the same drive and the same motivation to keep us going forward is in us as well.
Yeah.
We just have to hone it. We're not saying that we forget or ignore the trauma. And it's even good, sometimes to have those moments of vulnerability, those moments where you feel like it is helpless, those moments where you feel like no work is ever going to get done, nothing's ever going to happen. Yeah, we've all been there. But what I think helps me is when I look back at my people, and when I look at the Cheyennes and how we walked, we ran, we crawled from Oklahoma to get back to our homelands. And I think about, the life I have now, the ability for me to provide for my family, and this thing, the struggle of being subtly, discriminated against because of my long hair or my brown skin. But I think about my ancestors and being chased down by militias between Nebraska and Oklahoma. Farmers and army men chasing us in the middle of winter, sub-degree zero, with nothing but a sheet, and then being able to be here on our homeland. My life is difficult, but it's not as difficult as what my ancestors sacrificed for me to be here. And that's the same message I give to my children, same teaching that my mom gave to me. That as difficult as it may seem, there are other people that have it much more difficult than you, and our ancestors have much more difficult than I've had.
Yeah.
And so, that's something that me and my brothers and my sisters and even my friends, we really hold on to. And I think that there's a lot of tribes that have had that similar trek, trek of marching and returning to their homeland to be there. So yeah.
Yep, that's what I always remember from my grandmother is, she used to tell these stories that really just, squeezed your heart. And she would get through telling these horrible stories about just basic survival, and then look me, straight in the eye like an old Indian woman does, and said, and I went through all of that so that you could be here and help our people. I mean, so what you kind of are, our fate is stuck. Our ancestors, Roy always is talking about, have danced us back. We've been danced back to carry on the work that our ancestors laid before us. And, it's incredible what's happening now in the world. And I try to be more positive. And so I'm glad to have you on, Dion, so you can pull out some of that positive that's going on and the opportunities that we have today because of this litigation that we haven't had in the past.
Right. Well, thank you. And I think a lot of it's been revitalized for me because of my younger brother. My younger brother Leo Killsback, he's a doctor, and the stories that I talk about is something that he's put together in a book called The Sacred People. And what it talks about is pre-European contact.
Yeah.
And this is something for not only for the public, but for our people in particular. And this talks about pre-European contact and the stories and values. And this is on Amazon. And this is my, like I said, my little brother Dion Killsback, and that's that handsome guy right there. Yeah, and it's a 2-part series. So this is, talks about our ways and a little bit about our societies, but it comes from a very unique perspective because it comes from him being a Cheyenne, growing up the way that we grew up, and he's very unique because there are very few PhDs, very few doctors that have his status, meaning that he's reached a professorship as a doctor, and he's published books. And then the government, the other part series, it's a 2-part series. It's the same thing. He talks about our government and what we are as a sovereign people. And my brother Leo did a really good job of editing this, and it took a while for him to get it done. And we talked a little bit about the lateral racism and the lateral violence that we have amongst ourselves. And Leo's like me. We're very similar because in our circles, our worlds, whether it's academic or legal, we face that lateral oppression where we're viewed as threatening because of our hair. We don't have the light skin, or we have a broken accent, or to wear Jordans and T-shirts to meetings. We don't necessarily have to be suited up all the time. And you know what? Our vacations, we're not necessarily apt to go to Hawaii or Cancun. We want to go back home to the reservation on weekends. We want to see our grandmas and our aunts, and we want to put up a teepee. We want to cut teepee poles. That's our sense of vacation. So, despite Leo reaching professorship, and I know he had a really hard time, and but through our teachings and through our reliance on prayer and what we went through, I knew that he would be successful. And that's the thing that we've had to learn, is that a lot of times we have a goal, but if we try to achieve perfection on what that goal actually is, oftentimes it doesn't reach that. But we have to continually try to make progress. Progress, not perfection. And I'm stealing that from some movie or something, but that's the ideology, is that we have the same goal in mind, but we'll get there. And it may not work out exactly the way we want or the way we think, but if we can improve it, we can make it a little better for somebody else. Maybe they can, further that goal and get there to where we think it should be. And that's a whole ideology. That's a whole value concept that me and my brothers have learned, and we're trying to teach to our own children. So take a look at those books. I know it's a shameless plug from my brother, but I'm really, really proud of him, meaning that a Eurocentric or a Euro-Christian viewpoint. They're coming from an actually Cheyenne viewpoint, right. An academic viewpoint. That there's going to be things in there that are verified either through our stories, but also historically verified through non-media accounts. And so my brother did a really good job in these, and like I said, he's a professor. Him and his wife are both professors at Montana State University. They've made their way back to Montana. They've left the oven of Phoenix. It's 117. And I gotta give a shout out to my brother, my twin brother Damien. He's down at White Mountain Apache tribe right now, and as you know, that's a hot spot. He's there as a commissioned corps, serving as Partition Corps with the Health and Human Services. And I wish him the best, because I know his family's out in Germantown. His wife and his 2 young children are waiting for him, hoping that he's safe. But he's also doing his part to stop the pandemic of the coronavirus out there as well.
Wow. Ooh, what an inspiring family you have, Dion.
Seriously.
One thing I think people would be interested to hear about is your time in the Obama administration, in the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs office, because right now we're looking at that office with skeptical eyes, to say the least. What was your time like, and what was that decision that you had to make to actually, go into Interior at that time?
Well, first, I was actually a Bureau of Indian Affairs employee for a couple of years. I
Oh,
was
were
the
you really?
local I was a BIA self-determination specialist for the Northern Cheyenne Agency. It turned out that once I had passed my bar exam and was able to come and work for my tribe said, we can't put you to work. So I said, well, I want to be home. And then one of my good friends, and she's a really dear friend, almost family. She is family. Recruited me to come over to the BIA and said, "You still good to do good work. You still can make good salary, and you don't have to deal with travel politics." And she used to serve as the vice president for the tribe, and her name is Norma Garneau. And she recruited me to come over, and she allowed me to be the self-determination officer or self-determination specialist. So my responsibility there was really just to get the tribe to, apply for funds under 638 contracts, and I became an expert. I became a awarding official. I mean, I already knew 638 because I'd actually worked on summertime for the tribe as a 638 contractor under Natural Resources Department, doing summer youth work and parks and recreation work in the summer times. Yeah, I was there for a couple of years, and I had learned all the ropes, whether it's realty, even law enforcement, security contract, transportation, roads, forestry. I even did firefighting. I was a firefighter, even a crew boss. Did that on weekends. So I quickly made the ranks and moved up, and then
were you on any of those calendars,
those
BIA firefighter calendars?
Well, that's
we know you work out, Dion.
There was no calendar. I do work out. But that led me to take the PAC test and become a firefighter.
Look, he's going all serious, man. He's not acknowledging.
Yeah, I'm sitting here, so I'm just like, Google's gonna reveal if there's a calendar or not. I'm just saying, I will find it.
There's no calendar. There's no calendar.
There might be some good Facebook shots though, because he plays a lot of basketball.
Well, there's a lot of basketball, and you'll find some pictures. It's one of the things. Brian Newland, he's the chairman of the Bay News, and he was an attorney before coming and working in the Obama administration as well. And we played basketball at the Interior with Secretary Salazar, which is really fun. And we also got to play against Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan, but also with White House staff that had come over under the Obama administration. So we had this league that we play, every spring. And Indian Affairs had a really good team. Dal Lavender, Keith Moore, Brian Drapo, Brian Newland, Brian Rice. We were really tough to beat. We smoked competition essentially. Jody, she was the only female that played with us, and she was good. She was fast. She could shoot.
Wow.
But we had a lot of good times playing basketball. So body, mind, and soul, right? We have to take care of the body and mind. We have to exercise it just as much. So I work out every day, and I try to post those every day, motivation, and it's part of my my daily routine. I either work out in the morning or run in the morning, and then work out in the evening. And it used to be CrossFit, but I've changed it to fitness. They're following out with the the Black Lives Movement, the owner of CrossFit Kids, which led to a lot of disaffiliations, CrossFit gyms. And so it's fitness. It's a fitness reason that I use. And I haven't been to a gym since probably February, and that's because of the social distancing. So I had to buy my own workout equipment and stuff. So I work out at home, work out in my garage. My sons work out with me, and they're a lot faster than me, but they're not as strong as me. So they try to keep up. But getting back to the bomber mission.
Well handled. Well handled.
Thank you. But getting back to that, I had worked in New Mexico for the Hickory Apache Nation for a couple years, and I loved doing the work. It was really good work for the tribe. I had a call from a really good friend of mine. First was, part of the Obama administration transition team, Donald Lavender. And I refused. I said, let's go to DC. None at all. I said, the work is out here in Indian country. The work is out in Western Montana or Western United States. And then he called a year later and said, hey, we could really use an attorney out here with your expertise, someone that's not a DC guy. There's, a lot of DC attorneys out here that kind of go through the recycling. I said, no, I don't have no desire of a family. And then in 2011, I had just completed my ceremony. I'd gone through a fasting at Novos, which is Bear Butte. And he called me out of the blue and said, Dion, this is the last time I'm ever going to call you. If you don't take this, I'll never ask you again to do anything. I told down, I said, I'll come to DC. And so when I came to DC, I brought my family, two sons. I had my daughter and my son. I let them go back with their mother in Montana, and my wife at the time, and my two sons, and we had a daughter out there. My daughter is now 8 years old. She was born in Maryland, and she's also Canadian as well. She's First Nations. She's Kainai, or blood. So, being thrown, out of the pan into the fire, if you will, or baptism by fire. It's pretty much what it was. Everything was so fast paced. You're booked from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then there's all the offline meetings. In addition, I lived in Germantown, which is only about 25 miles from DC Metro. But DC Metro meaning that I had to walk, take a bus, and ride the metro, and then walk another mile. So it was about a 2.5 hour commute to and from. Just so I could have some green grass and some trees, meaning that I didn't want to live in a concrete jungle. And it put me pretty close to my twin brother Damien, who was working in Maryland at the time in Germantown with IHS. So it was good to have family out there. But my portfolio was started out with. I remember my first day. But she's the principal deputy assistant secretary. She goes, "Oh, Dion, great, you're here now." And I've known Jody because we were on the powwow trail together. I'd see her here and there. And her husband at the time was a good grass dancer. I was a grass dancer. Wasn't as good as Rusty. He'd always win. I never won. But I knew Jody from the powwow trail. And she goes, "Oh yeah, you're Cheyenne. I got Cheyenne relatives too." They're great. Come on up here to the 6th floor. We got a meeting with the deputy solicitor and Fish and Wildlife Service. Okay, great. We walk into the meeting and there's all the suits, and then me and Jody walk in. We're the two brown people. And she said, "This is Dion Killsback. He's our new counselor to the assistant secretary and handling this issue." I didn't know what the issue was. The issue was eagle feathers. And so I'd gone in and said, "Okay, what's the assistant secretary's position on eagle feathers?" And I said, "I believe I would have to get back to you, but I want to know what your thoughts are first." So as an attorney, you have to see what Fish and Wildlife Service, Park Service, and all the other attorneys and see what their position is first. And said, "Well, let's take that under advisement, take it back and see." But I mean, I had handled eagle feathers from that day on. And so eagle feathers, as you know, became part of a trafficking scheme by the U.S. Department of Justice in Operation Rolling Thunder, where numerous tribal members and people that had gone to powwows were arrested and prosecuted for trafficking eagle feathers and eagle parts. But the position was from Indian tribes was that Indian people were being unfairly targeted, meaning that there are a lot of other trafficking of other contraband besides eagle feathers, and eagle feathers for Indian people were done routinely, the barter and trading system. So we had to develop and refine a policy, and then obviously we're finding justice on that. And then the other thing that I worked on was implementation of the 2010 omnibus bill for the Water Settlement Act of the Crow Tribe, but also the New Mexico tribes as well, and the Amet as well. So I did water law. So we did implementation of the Crow tribe's $427 million water settlement, which was the largest in history, mandatory funding. Working closely with the Crow tribe at that time, being out of Montana doing water law. And then we're also working on negotiating new water rights settlements with other tribes throughout the country, but in particular the Blackfeet tribe, as well as the Confederate States and Kootenai tribes. And then working with the Secretary of the Water Rights Office on developing negotiation teams, and then doing water consultations as well for Indian water rights, and working closely with the Solicitor's Office on that. So, cultural issues, Indian water were most of my main things, but then, you become a victim of your success. Larry Echohawk left along with a lot of his staffers, and then Dell had to take the reins, and then Dell transitioned to Kevin Washburn. Was the new assistant secretary that was confirmed. So I got along with a lot of folks. We developed serious MOAs between the Department of Defense, the USDA, and the Department of Interior on sacred sites protection, consistent with the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I say all these things. It just kind of roll up my mind. I'm just rolling. There's a lot more. I mean, we did Indian gaming. We did, and in revenue allocation plans, compacts. We work heavily with Navajo. On water rights as well. And then just overall legislation. Trying to get the Carcieri fix done. Working on overall funding for Interior. Changing authorities, bringing authority, getting it back down to the agency and regional offices. It was 2 years of work, but it felt like probably 4. And usually that's the limit. You put 2 years in and then you're done. So during that time, I did get to meet with Obama and Biden, but also got to work closely with Secretary Salazar, traveling around in his entourage, and getting the first class treatment was fun. But, the political atmosphere in a Democratic administration was positive, meaning that Indian issues, meaning that we had the annual meeting, consultation, tribal nations in December every year. Yep. And obviously we had, the TIPIC meetings on a quarterly basis. And then every other, annual meeting that coincided with that, whether that was NCAI, NIGC, obviously the repatriation issues that we handle. Those are the things that were important. We got a lot of attention, got a lot of funding, a lot of support. So that was really good. But we also knew that work we needed to move as far as we can, as quickly as we can. Mm-hmm. Because the pendulum swing. Yeah. And it swung hard. It swung hard in November of 2016. It swung hard back the other way.
So what do you think your office is like now, or what it's been like the last 3.5 years?
Well, we've been able to meet with Assistant Secretary Cherson. She has a really good and a close relationship with with Chairman Not Afraid for the Crow Tribe. I believe that Terry Sweeney, coming from Alaska, was a unique pick for the Assistant Secretary because she's not from the mainland, but also that she has, different interests from Indian tribes. And I think the Indian tribes from the lower 48 are separate from the ANCs, Alaska Native Corporations, on purpose. If you look at the history between the Alaska Native tribes and the corporations and what established, their structure versus the lower 48 tribes, it was done purposeful. Indian tribes from the U.S. government were given too many rights, and there's a trust responsibility that has been passed down from the Marshall Trilogy that is bestowed upon all Indian tribes, and that's a heavy political but also financial burden that the United States must carry, and unfortunately they do not live up to. In passing the Alaskan Natives Corporations Act, they made it very clear that there was no trust responsibility, and that these Alaskan Natives would not be bestowed the same status as the lower 48 treaty tribes or tribes that were federally recognized. So, in appointing and confirming Terry Sweeney, you have the same exact issues. Individual Alaskan tribes' ability to provide for themselves and exercise their sovereignty, the ability to provide for themselves in their native homeland since time immemorial, under a different legal structure, obviously, but with Terry Sweeney at the helm, she's in a unique position to prioritize Alaskan issues. And I think that's fine. Every administration gets to choose an individual or person to prioritize their issues within the line of administration. Unfortunately, I think with the coup that was passed in March, a lot of tribes opposed the Alaskan corporations receiving those distribution of funds, and a lot of attorneys and a lot of tribes, sought Terry Sweeney to be removed or resign because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a difficult position for Terry Sweeney because as the Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you have a clear statutory and regulatory structure where your responsibility is to those federally recognized tribes, and it separates out those. So, in interior, you have insular affairs. Insular affairs, you look at the Samoans or Hawaiian tribes. They're not, and even Alaskan Native corporations, they are not technically federally recognized tribes. Those insular affairs are their own department, and it's their own lane. So it's a very different structure now. And I know that under the current administration, the White House has not appointed and have had a lot of vacant positions that will remain unfilled. Mm-hmm. And what you have those, you have a wealth of career folks, both at the agency level and the central office level, that understand the dynamics of their bureaucracy. And so, depending on the leadership or lack thereof, things can get done. But it really takes a leader. And I think if you're not aware, you don't become aware, you don't become informed, things don't get done. And I think we see that in the Sweeney administration and the Trump administration. The example that I give is, under the Obama administration, we saw a lot of feuded trust applications being processed. And acres, 200,000 acres be put back in the trust for Indian tribe. And that was something that under the Bush administration did not occur. 15 acres, maybe 20, maybe less than 100 acres were actually put into trust. Even though the Code of Federal Regulations demands, that the Bureau of Indian Affairs process those applications for fee to trust, they weren't being processed under the Bush administration. But when the Obama administration took over, that became a priority. And now, back in the Trump administration, we see that that's no longer a priority. Applications for fee to trust have been essentially halted. And that's under the administration, including Ms. Sweeney's. So, like I said, different priorities for that administration. And, with the administration, they are allowed to determine what those priorities are.
That's why it's important to vote, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is so important to get the vote out. And I think, I want to kind of go back to the Oklahoma Mcgirt case. We talk about the politicians there. Tom Cole has been a big advocate for Indian tribes for a long time. And he's a Republican. But at the same time, I can't help but think that, the good old boy, elbow to elbow, come on, let's take care of this. Let's handle this type of deal. Let's go behind closed doors. Let's go have a drink and talk about this. Let's figure this out. And you bring, Joe tribal member, whether he's Cherokee or Chickasaw or what have you, and you say, listen, let's make this happen. We get the Supreme Court. And I think that's all on our minds, is that, man, from a Plains Indian tribe, we call those Indians those Indians that hang around the fort Indians.
Right.
They're easy access. They give you, they're going to tell you what you want to hear, and they're going to be that nice go-between. But we need those other leaders, those leaders that are staunch advocates, staunch supporters for tribal, and that's what we miss. And I think that's what we miss, in these really, really difficult times. So I think it's good that leaders are able to work the system as much as they can, but at the same time, not give anything up. They don't need to. I think that's a thing. If we recognize politicians that do that, and we're seeing that. I think candidates are beginning to build themselves. They're beginning to stand out. To break that norm. Of the status quo. And we here in Montana, we elect Republicans and Democrats, and all Indian tribes know that no Republican and no Democrat is going to see an Indian issue 100% their way. And we decide at the very last minute. Why? Because our vote is usually that vote that swings it just enough to get it in our favor. And tribes have been very, very careful on who they endorse and who they support for this very reason. And I think that would be good if candidates were a little bit more vocal about Indian issues. I think those that say they are and actually follow through. We can see through that now. But those that have been on the fence, it's very similar to the Black Lives Movement. I think you have to be either for Indian issues or you're against it. Just like you have to be either against racism or you're racist. There's no middle ground. You have to make a decision. You can't sit on the side and say, you know what, that doesn't affect me. You know what, and that doesn't impact me. You know what, I don't see that. No, it's there. You have to be aware of it, and you have to make a decision. That's how important our votes are.
Hey, Kim.
Hey, Shannon. I was just like, I have to remind people to go register to vote.
Yeah, it's going to be so important. Though I could go off on, I was disappointed that it took Joe Biden so long to put his Indian policy up and post it. It was one of the last things he did on his campaign website. I was disappointed in that when Bernie Sanders had already had a strong Indian policy and was doing a lot in Indian country. Biden hadn't done any of that. And I think it was just last week or a few weeks ago where he had a meeting, Biden or his folks had a meeting with tribes from Michigan where they gave him a piece of their mind. And that's when I saw the new policy statement in Indian affairs from the Biden campaign. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're not, equally on the mantle of policy issues that we should be. But we'll educate him and remind him of what it is that we need. Are you involved, Dion, at all with the Biden campaign?
No, I'm not. And that's purposeful. Meaning that I think there are a lot of attorneys and a lot of groups that do want to be part of the larger national campaign. And I think Biden did a good job by appointing, I think, Clara Pratt. She's a Navajo, and I've worked with her before, and she really has a good pulse of what the Indian country needs. Obviously, she's Navajo, so I think a lot of attention will be garnered by Navajo just because of their size and their presence. But I think Clara, coming from again the Obama administration, having that sense of the pulse of the Indian country, I think she's a good addition to that team. I think in my mind, I'm doing the work that I wanted to do, which is helping Indian tribes try to achieve their goals on a tribal basis. I think we can the biggest thing that the administration can do is fulfill its funding obligations, meaning that bureaucracy. This is the thing that I'm working with at Crow right now is the Crow tribe's transition to operate its own police department, and there's been a lot of pushback and obstacles that the tribe can overcome, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs will get a message. And Tara Sweeney's had this conversation with Chairman Otterford that we support the tribe, and last week we had Senator Dean who said it's all about self-determination. We support the tribe in doing that. So I think that type of support from the administration is really important for any tribe. But when it comes down to it, there's a lot of red tape. The bureaucracy they can really stifle progress.
Yeah.
And it's intentional.
Yeah.
Indian tribes are the most heavily regulated people in the country. And we have a dedicated USC code, dedicated CFR regulations. Everything from our roads to our lands, to our water, even to our eagle feathers and how we practice our religion. And so it's, and Senator James, one of his slogans is, less government. And I agree with that. But tribal governments have to be responsible as well, and that's where I come in, and I think other attorneys come in as well. We want to help tribes as much as possible, and that's the role I play.
Yeah. So, Kim, what's it been like being co-host?
I love it here. No, seriously. So that was kind of a smart alecky thing. I love it because I'm always so fascinated and interested to hear what other folks are up to, and there's something about hanging out with the dude from Montana because he's from my neighborhood. And so it's nice to make that connection and to kind of hear, just what folks are up to and, community connection. I love it.
Oh, there is some fact going on right now about voting. Can I bring, and I know it's getting late. But Glenn, we have to vote. Our two-party system sucks, but the current state of affairs has set back, and Dion, you probably can get into this, set back our environmental regulations, the harm to our waters, has threatened to terminate tribes. We can't stay in the current administration. And electoral votes, You know, that's an interesting issue, and I don't know if this is something we wanna get into, but it's something that I know we're gonna have to talk about on the show as we
Yeah.
get closer to November. But I do hope people will, uh, consider, um, uh, what they do on, voting day in November, wisely, especially if you're in Indian country and wanna support Indian country.
I would just add to, we can't forget voting on the local level. National elections are super important, but you know what? I think one of the takeaways from what we've been experiencing for a minute here is the down tickets matter. Down tickets matter. And, you know, I'm of the urban variety of native here. So, you know, it matters especially in the larger cities. You know, who are you voting for mayor? Who are you voting for in your local legislature? All of that matters. And I'm even going to take it back down to local level, you know, tribal government, you know, and we all know this. I mean, tribal elections are a whole other beast, but it's like, you know, you oops, you are voting, you know, when you vote your tribal officials, they have relationships outside of the tribe, and that can influence things too. So please vote.
I agree. I think, you know, Kim and Shannon, you know, there's so many countries, you know, throughout the world that practice a democracy now. And, you know, our government, even the United States government, was modeled off of democracy, you know, from the Iroquois Confederacy. And so the fact that it's an electoral college, though, the electoral college, you know, bases its, you know, numbers based on population and based on a system that's within the Constitution that, you know, is not consistent with often what the popular vote ends up being. You know, and you know that happened in 2000 when Bush defeated Gore in the whole Florida litigation. Went to the Supreme Court. So I do believe that you know there should be constitutional amendments to the Constitution, but those amendments are very difficult. But working within the system that we have, I do believe that exercising our right to vote is also exercising our sovereignty, meaning that individual tribes within their own tribe, you know, tribal right to vote. You know, they get to pick their leadership. Now, granted, you know, many tribes are subject to an Indian organization, you know, constitution or structure, and they have the ability to change that, and those can be difficult as well. You know, so like my tribe, the Northern Cheyenne. The traditional form of government, you know, was essentially set aside through the adoption of the IRA Constitution. But you know, tribes that I do work with, like the Crow tribe, they're a treaty tribe, and they operate not under an IRA Constitution, and their individual members have treaty rights that they assert and that they're proud of every day. So I do believe that you know, it is important for everybody to vote within their local, but also in the national election. And that's how they're heard. Um, you know, our system, as chaotic and as even disappointing as it is sometimes, we are not at a state of where we're riding in the streets, removing dictatorships, and where there's no military force, you know, parading around the streets, you know, to instill or to remove a president, and that's a good thing. I really do believe that's a good thing. And you know, obviously, other countries, you know, throughout the world have different concepts of their constitution and their government and the use of military force, but we don't have that here, and so I think that's a good thing.
And then there's tribal governments.
And then there's tribal governments.
We won't go there. Let's stop
That's
that.
a different show. That's a different show.
Oh man, I've been scared in some tribal
Yes,
council
and I've
meetings. I don't know
litigated.
about you guys.
Yeah.
Say that again,
I've
Dion.
been in a lot of those.
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of tribal council meetings. I've been in removal hearings. I have been in litigation, in the courts. So that's what I do. I do tribal law, and it's interesting. But at the same time, this is why we do it. And the unfortunately, I like to say, and the law is actually easy. If people follow the law, it's actually easy. It's what the difficult part is the human aspect, human motivation, human motives, human loyalties. The humanness makes things difficult. So understand that Indians, we tend to be much more human than lawyers, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like Indians being much more human than being much more lawyerly.
Yeah.
I would, I'm often criticized that I think like a lawyer too much. I do. I do everything I do as a lawyer, but I like being at home and around my children and family and not thinking like a lawyer. And it's exhausting, as you know.
Yeah. It is, but we're glad you're out there doing it, Dion. And I'm sure your children will thank you, and follow in the same footsteps that you and your ancestors have laid before them. So we're really grateful you're out there, Dion, doing the work that you're doing. Any last questions or follow up? I know there's been some great comments from our folks who are watching out there. Thank you, everybody. I see a lot of new names and old names, and so we're all glad that you're here with us. Sorry we can't get to everyone's questions, but anyone have any last words?
I will thank you, Kim and Shannon, for hosting this Red Hoop Talk. I got a lot of jokes. A lot of people were thinking it's going to be a red table talk, where you're talking about some entanglements. I said I haven't hoped. I mean, I hope there's no entanglements here. We're talking about it, but I think you guys are doing a great job. This service here that we're providing here and providing a platform for Indian issues, but also just talking about our separate worlds, but trying to bring that out to the public to kind of get at what we're dealing with, but also to see our successes and seeing the connections that we have. Shannon and I go back a while with our mutual friend and good colleague, Mr. Pottery. But my brother, he graduated from U of A. He's a Wildcat, and we all have these connections, and we're more connected, and we have a lot more in common than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
So I'll leave us with that. It's a basic tenet and value. We actually have a lot more in common with one another, and we actually have the same goals. We just have different ideas and ways of getting there and achieving that. So let's keep on fighting that good fight every day, and keep each other in our thoughts and prayers as we move forward.
Thank you, Dion. I'm gonna bring you down, Dion, but hold on, so we can debrief afterwards. And thank you. Dion was awesome. He's such a good guy and is doing some really incredible work up there.
Amazing. Yeah.
So you've been a co-host. Do you think you'll want to do it again?
Yes, I'd love to.
Well, I'm not quite sure. And for those of you who got on a little late, Roy was unable to be with us tonight because his father passed away and he needed to go take care of family matters. I'm not quite sure if he'll be back with us next week. I'm hoping that he will be able to, but hey, Kim, if he's not.
I'm probably available.
And guess who's on next week is Allie Joseph. She is a filmmaker, and she's Shinnecock, from over here and on the East Coast in New York. And so she's going to be a rambunctious lady. It would be fun. The three of us, I could see that. Old Lance will probably say gross on a few things.
I think that would be great. Yeah, I love like what Dion was just saying. I love what y'all are doing here, and it's great to see what everyone is up to in Indian country.
Yeah,
and it's always great to spend time with you, my friend. So
and here as well, I wish we weren't so far apart, but it is wonderful to see your face. And thanks for agreeing to once again to step out on a limb with me for the show.
My pleasure, my absolute pleasure.
And well, with that, another Red Hoop Talk show has come and has gone. If you didn't get to see it all, remember you can watch it streaming. Please like us. Please subscribe. One day we might be able to monetize this thing so that it actually brings in some funding for the Association on American Indian Affairs, who's the producer of the show. And they're the oldest nonprofit serving Indian country. They've been around since 1922 and do a lot of good work on protecting our cultural sovereignty. So thank you, the association, and you can also see all the shows of Red Hoop Talk on our website, indian-affairs.org. I think that's all the plugs I have. I want to plug Kim one more time in Heart River Coaching. Please check out our website and ask her some questions. I think
you some questions.
You do free consulting or free, initial consult, right?
Yeah, anybody who, and it doesn't have to be about, hey, can I hire you? Although that's great. But if you are really curious about coaching, I love coaching, and I'm happy to just visit with you and share information with you. And if I could just add one other thing, I have a podcast, Sass and Nosh. I am with my sister girl, Alex V. Yogi. We have a sassy podcast.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, sass, like sass, and nosh, like food. We both also honor our Jewish relatives that way. But it's basically, we are Indigenous, feminist, take no prisoners kind of women on our podcast. So check that out. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Anchor FM.
Excellent. I'm trying to find it real quick so I could share the link with everyone, but I couldn't find it. But it's on Spotify.
It's on Spotify.
Right. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Kim. So that's it. Shall we call it a close?
Let's call it a night. Thank you, everybody, all of our watchers and our listeners and our commenters.
Bye, everyone. Yakoki. Good night.